My name is Russ, grateful alcoholic. It's a privilege to be able to introduce Deb. I got to meet her years ago at North Platte when we were having area meetings out there. And by God's grace, been able to stay friends with her over these years. And she is just a great representative of Alcoholics Anonymous. And we're so grateful to have you here today. So please welcome Deb O.
All right.
Just check. Oh, wait a minute. It's got the dropsy. Oh, I think we're good.
Okay.
We'll make it work. I'm Deb Overmiller, and I am a very grateful alcoholic.
Thank you. Yeah.
Back in the day, when I came into these rooms in like 1983, I had kept hearing people say they were grateful, and I thought, what the hell for?
Amen.
I mean, I was just in that place of I had no clue what I was doing. Or I was thinking about long-term, what's life going to look like if I can't drink anymore? I mean, it scared me to death. I grew up in a little town called Greeley, Nebraska. Yeah. Irish Catholic predominantly. I am the oldest of 18 children. Yeah. So that in itself gave me reason to drink, right? I was like, oh my God. But no. You know, I initially, as I've thought about this over time, that was my excuse to drink. Oh, poor me. I'm the oldest. I've got all these responsibilities and blah, 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 blah. And growing up in a small town, whoever was talking earlier, I'm sorry, I don't remember names well, but you said something about driving around, cruising and drinking. That's what we did, small town living. And I grew up with several Irish drunken uncles. And every time those uncles got together, we had a fight. You know, so alcohol does strange things to all of us, doesn't it? So anyhow, you know, I kept looking for that proverbial golden ring. You know, it's out there somewhere. You know, I wanted to be something I wasn't. I wanted to be 10 foot tall. I mean, piss me off and look out. I can get there in a heartbeat. But, you know, I just wasn't happy with me. That song, Oh Yes, I'm the Great Pretender, that was me. I could con my way out of a brown paper bag, and I could tell you a story that was this long because I have Irish background. I have the gift of gab. You know, so all of these things in my life that, you know, I didn't look at them as unique or special. I was, you know, that glass half empty kind of person that, like I said, oh, poor me. So anyhow, you know, went about life, and I hung around with people just like me. So I did not realize that maybe there was some issues. I didn't drink every day. I didn't crave alcohol. I didn't have to have it, so I thought. But 9 times out of 10, when I drank, I got into trouble. So, you know, I hung around. I had 2 groups of friends. I had my nice girlfriends, and then I had my naughty girlfriends. And depending on my mood, it depended on who I hung with. So, you know, life goes on, and I get myself into a little bit of trouble because when I got drunk, I couldn't guarantee what I was going to do. And, you know, there might have been a little alcohol and sex and things like that involved. And who said something about the pill? I can relate. Because the next thing I know, I'm a single mom. And not only did I do it once, I did it twice. Or got caught twice, let's put it that way. I mean, this is a program of rigorous honesty. And I learned that too. But, you know, I carried around a lot of garbage and guilt. I didn't want to admit that back in the day because, by gosh, I was going to take care of it no matter what. And that's kind of what I grew up with was we are family and we take care of each other and no matter what, we can handle it. But I got myself into something I couldn't handle. I just didn't realize it at the time. So anyhow, when I found out I realized I was pregnant the second time, I ran. Because I thought, it's this town. I got to get the hell out of here. I just got to find a new breeding ground. I don't know. But that was naughty, wasn't it? But anyhow, I moved to Loup City, met a guy, of course. And, you know, this was another aha moment for me, too. Realizing that, I mean, truly, I came from a large, loving family. We did not hug and kiss and say, I love you openly, but we blast you on the side of the arm and say, how the hell are you? That was our terms of endearment. And I was okay with that. You know, that's what we knew. So this warm, fuzzy, hugging stuff wasn't quite my cup of tea. Today it is, but back then not. So anyhow, go to Loup City, I meet this wonderful person who definitely has a problem with alcohol because we met in a bar. That's where I worked. You know, but we clicked. We did. And, you know, I did not realize, because my concept of alcoholism was that person with that brown paper bag, you know, on the streets of Denver, you know, Skid Row, whatever. Didn't have a clue what being an alcoholic meant. But anyhow, we dated a little bit, we fooled around a little bit, and he says, do you want to marry me? And I'm like, of course I want to marry you. If you promise me you'll quit drinking for a year. Who am I? But, you know, his drinking was worse, so that was my comparison there. Anyhow, we did get married, and that was in 1979. And then we turned around and bought a bar. And if you want to see demise, buy a bar. And so we did that from 80 to 83. And that's where the shit hit the fan. And it wasn't me that caused it, which is surprising because I knew we had some issues and I knew he drank too much. Way too much. And anyhow, a friend, and again, what an amazing higher power we have. And I did not know that at that time. But a guy that Denny had was working for at the time, a farmer, came in and he said, and we owned the bar, so I'm there at 8 o'clock in the morning, and in walks Jerry. And I'm like, oh, that's strange. And he goes, there's a problem. I'm like, what? You know, what problem? Denial of the highest magnitude. And anyhow, he talks to me about Denny's drinking. And I said, you know, I've noticed things, yada, yada, yada. So anyhow, he gets the ball rolling. He lines up some of the brothers and people and the cousins and people and we go do an intervention at our house. And Denny's hung over as heck. And he's like, what? I'm too busy, as we all allude to. And anyhow, talked him into going. And he went. And he didn't call me to come and get him. I'm like, uh-oh. But he's in treatment. And anyhow, I go up for 10 days as a spouse. And they screw with my head something terrible. You know, but they tell me that when I took the test that they give everybody that goes in there, that I came out just a couple points below Denny. And I knew he was bad. So anyhow, they, like I said, screw with me enough to, you know, convince me. Now, they did not convince me. I stand corrected. They talk with me and say, well, it could be because you've been living with him too long. Or, you know, there could be some characteristics. And there was, and there is, you know, but it took me a while to admit that I was an alcoholic because he was my problem. So anyhow, thank God, by the grace of God, we made it through treatment and we came home to reality, and financially, oh my God, it was a disaster. Spiritually, emotionally, relationship, it was a train wreck. And, coming out of there where you're in that safe little bubble, and then you have to walk out of there and face reality. And it was like, oh, how are we going to do this? Because there was a lot of issues. Anyhow, we made it through. We were fortunate enough to be married 32 years and 28 of them in sobriety. And we were able to build a wonderful relationship. I can honestly stand up here and say we never argued once. That in itself is amazing. But we had discussions, don't get me wrong. I love that laughter on that word, discussions. But, we could always agree to disagree. We were a team, and how blessed we were to get to be able to build that kind of relationship. So, life is going on, and the job that he had for 20-some years, they sold the ranch, we had to move. Our life kind of came around to this upheaval. And in 2000, we'd lived in the country the whole time we were married. And in 2000, we had to move off the place we'd been on for, 15 years or something like that. The only home our youngest daughter knew. And we actually eventually ended up buying his mom and dad's house in Loup City. So, it's so amazing to me how life happens. And I used to call them coincidences. Today, I know they were flipping miracles, just one right after the other, and how blessed we were to experience this. So we bought the house in 2000, and in 2011, Denny was diagnosed with cancer. And that was in April of 2011, and in May of 2011, we buried him. Yeah, fast and furious. But, I look at that whole situation as a wonderful life experience of, God knowing that Denny, he was a weenie. He just was. I'm sorry, God, no. But anyhow, no, he was, I was so proud to be married to the man because he was so stoic in the fact that it is what it is and we have to accept what is. And, the way he went out so gracefully. And we actually, his funeral, we buried him on the day of his AA anniversary. And that was not planned. It just, everything fell into place, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, this is his anniversary day. So it just so happened that the casket that we had a little drawer in it. So we put his medallion in there, before we closed the casket. So, my point with that little bit of morbidity is that, I can look at those things and treasure them today. That is because of this program. And every one of you sitting here in this room today, and the many rooms that I've been fortunate to travel to, because you heard me say before, oh, poor me. And I wallowed in it. And so to be able to stand here and realize that, life's lessons can teach us so much. And it's up to us what we get out of it. And, I was so blessed to have the experiences that I've had over time. And, when I think about, hold on, I got to grab. When I think about this title right here, together is how we make it, and how important that really has become in my life and all my experiences. I do not want to ever stand alone, because I tried it for how many years and it flipping didn't work. You know, it was disappointing all the way around. So, with that, I try to take the experiences I've been given and share them with others, because I think that's our charge. We're here because of who or what. I think about those early meetings that I walked into. And I tried Al-Anon, and I love Al-Anon, don't get me wrong, but I found out that I was still living a lie when I was there. You know, I had to be honest. And I could talk about Denny all I wanted, but it wasn't doing me a damn bit of good. So, coming around to that aspect of life too, that I can't fix anybody else. I can just barely fix myself at times. And if it weren't for my higher power, I wouldn't be here today, period. But I walked into those early rooms, and I'm sorry I've lost him here, but when you were talking about that hard line, I met a few of them people, and they were like, how do you think that's going to work? Or what's going to happen if you do that? But they loved us all the same. You could screw up, you could mess up, and you could try to do it your own way, which I did. I'll do steps 1, but can we just go to 12? I don't want to do the rest of them steps. That looks hard and painful. And there was a sign in treatment, no pain, no gain, and I hated that sucker. Because I thought, haven't we gone through enough pain already? Why do I need more? But it was good pain. And I understand that today, that it took all that blood, sweat, and tears. It took every drink we drank. It took every bad word and every bent frying pan that I threw at him that missed, thank God. But, it took all of that to get here today. I had to learn, I had to grow, and I had to do it the hard way. I didn't get it the first time. Thank God that the day I admitted I was an alcoholic, I've not had to take another drink. And I thank God for that. But I also thank God for the people that come into the rooms and tell me about their relapses and their experiences. Because that too keeps me sober. It reminds me of what I don't want to have to do. But there are no guarantees. And that's why I stand here today. That's why I go to the meetings that I go to. That's why, service work is important to me. Because those are the things that definitely keep me sober. Because it's not anything, the things I think are still kind of a little ill sometimes. So, I've got to be reminded of where I came from. And, I can picture right now all those old farts in that front row at that meeting. Yep, that's how it was. You got it. A stare down. But, like I said, they loved us all the same. And they were there no matter what. There came a point in our lives where, not our finest moment, but financially, like I said earlier, it was horrible. So, in AA, they teach you to take on your responsibilities. If you owe money, pay it, even if it's $1 at a time. Those kinds of things. And we were in a situation where, they told us, you guys can't do this. You can't get out from under this. You are going to have to file bankruptcy. Filing bankruptcy is better than losing your sobriety. And it was not our finest moment. But we had friends there that took and walked us through the whole thing and supported us. even though we didn't feel right about it. So it's things, people like that are there at your weakest moments that, I never found anywhere but right here in these rooms. And, Ray and Marge, they were our sponsors, and their kids watched our kids while we went to meetings. Ray didn't take no for an answer. He said something like, we'll be there to pick you up at this time. And one of the girls has got the kids. There was no asking anything. It was, you will or else kind of situation, which that's what we needed. And I thank God for those people that understood how we thought, because it was definitely alcoholic thinking. I got to tell this little story, and it's on Denny, but he was out in the cornfield, and he was working on the pivot, and Ray calls and said, where's Denny? And I told him, and he goes, okay, I'll go find him. We're going to a meeting. And Denny was greased from head to toe, and Ray would take no for an answer. Hauled him to where he needed to be, and that's the way our lives went, was, they showed us one step after the other of how this needs to work. And it's not the way I want it to work, it's the way the program was intended to work. That was a big lesson for me. What changed over time? I asked myself that question. Kind of a little bit of why. And I don't like asking why too much. Because I just, as Denny would say, I need to accept it. But, what changed? My ideas. I got new ideas. My emotions. I found out I can deal with emotions today. I stood up here and dang near bawled. But it's okay, because that's the reality of it. And my attitudes, because my attitude back then really sucked. And so, and that's in the big book. I read the first 164 pages of that book immediately. I didn't understand a damn thing I read. Because I was putting my own injection, I'll take this piece, but not that piece, Or I just had no clue of what I was really reading. And, I thank God for the people that had the patience to stay with me through that whole thing. They remembered where they came from. I didn't realize what passing it on really, truly meant. They were willing to give of their time, actually some money, because they drove us a lot of miles to a lot of different meetings. Free babysitting. I mean, life was pretty good. I also come to realize that I had this thing that was poison. My ego. I had a big one. Even though I'm a short person, I had an ego that went with, I'm going to figure this out come hell or high water. Determination. All those, what I thought were qualities, which can be. Don't get me wrong. But I realized I was ego-driven because I wanted to be somebody still. So anyhow, they helped me get knocked down to right size. And I do. I can say I truly appreciate that today. The word humility, just about made me vomit, Humility, what's that? But I've gotten a dose of it here and there. And I need to be reminded of that. AA helped me to see me. And it scared the crap out of me. But it was the bestest thing ever. Because I could deal with the real me instead of being that fake and phony that I'd been for so many years. I did not want to admit defeat. That's what it came down to. I was defeated. Alcohol had whooped me. And Denny and our relationship, it was life in general, whooped. defeated. And I found out that was a pretty awesome thing when you admitted defeat. But I didn't grow up with that attitude. So, then I found out that, the other point is I have to ask for help. What? I suck at that. Yeah, I can do this, again, there goes that ego and attitude. But I've come to realize that I need help, and I need it daily. And I turn to my higher power for that help. But I also have to verbally sometimes say, can you help me with this? It's a little bit more. I bit off more than I can chew. And that's okay. After Denny died, and, again, talk about chain of events and God's amazing grace. We got that diagnosis in April, and he was gone in May, and our district was putting on the Area 41 reunion in June. And at one point, I wanted to kill our DCM because he didn't really ask, he just kind of volunteered our district. That was my side of the story. His is a little different. But anyhow, again, by God's amazing grace, here was something that I was directly involved with that kept me out of me. And at that time, it was really, really important. And the AA family surrounded my family. And, got me through a really trying time. And I will never forget that, realizing that how AA has become probably more of a family than my own family. Because you all know where I come from. Sometimes my siblings don't understand me, and that's okay. They don't have to. Because, I understand me better today because of what I've learned around these tables. But, needless to say, that reunion situation, took us through some bad times. And, with that, realizing that, dang it, AA doesn't have all the answers I needed, And that took a lot to admit because I love AA. I mean, there's nothing better. The people, the opportunities that I've had through the years, it's just, I am a blessed person, and I never thought I'd say something like that, But I've come to realize that I can be real in this doesn't fix it all. There are other resources out there, and sometimes we have to reach for them. And that took me a while to realize that, AA has given me my life. But I also have to realize I need a little bit more. After Denny died, I felt a little squirrely. I was lost. And even though AA helped me in so many ways, I found out that I went to a grief group. Best thing ever, aside from AA. But AA opened that door of realizing there's other opportunities out there that I have to look for and take. And my spiritual conditioning was not real good either. Matter of fact, I thought God had abandoned me somewhere along the line. I'd pray to him when the shit hit the fan, but, I took advantage of that too. So I figured we were done. But AA got me back there. They say what God brings you to AA and AA brings you to God, and I got to experience that over and over and over again. And so I had an opportunity to go on kind of a spiritual walk. And these chain of events, my mom dying, Denny dying, I lost 2 brothers. I mean, it was just kind of boom, boom, boom. Then I ended up being diagnosed with breast cancer. And it was like, yeah, how much more can you give me? And that was a stupid question to ask. Watch what you pray for. Isn't that something they tell us? But in all of this, again, the opportunities that I've been blessed with that enhanced my gratitude for what I have. It's not about what I don't have or what He is giving me, as I say that. But because of the fellowship, I've learned that every bump in the road can be an opportunity to learn, to grow, and I've had the opportunity to sponsor a few people, and what a joy that is. Because I always feel like I'm getting more from them than they're giving to me, or, they think I have some answers that I have none of. I mean, it's like, go to the bathroom. That was bad. Sometimes I still don't have a filter. And whoever gave me the after the lunch deal, I'm going to get even here somewhere. But I have found that I still have things to learn. I still need things I need to hear. How many times have you read the big book or been in a study and thought, I've never heard that before? Did they rewrite that? No, they didn't. But I have found too that, and last night, okay, so I'm going to Taylor, Nebraska last night for a meeting, but I'm meeting with a couple of my sponsees, and we're doing Joe and Charlie. And I love those guys. I could just listen and re-listen, and every time I listen, I hear something different. Like, where the hell was that? But it's always been there, because they haven't changed the tapes on Joe and Charlie either. But the thing that popped out at me last night was the line where they say, read, question, wonder. I mean, that is amazing. And it's in there. And I'm like, maybe I'm not hopeless. Because that's what I love about AA. And I stagnated at one point. I mean, life was going pretty good. We had bought a house in town. We were living the dream and actually had a little money in the bank. And, some of those things that we finally get to experience, those promises that started coming true. And then, it was like, oh, whatever. Life is okay. We're sober. And pretty soon it was like, we're boring. I mean, we're going to meetings, sort of. Doing our thing, sort of. And then realize, there's got to be a little bit more to this. Our quality of sobriety became very questionable. We weren't drinking, and our relationship was good. Everything was just kind of status quo. And there's sometimes when I think that bump in the road is what woke us up to the stagnation that we were experiencing. Because we were just doing barely what we had to do to get by. And I thank God that He finally, drop kicked us through the goalposts of life and said, come on, wake up, get involved, do something different, because you're boring. And, having these opportunities has meant so much, my life every day means so much more to me today than ever before. And I have to say it's because of some of the people I hang around with that are in this room today. The things that I've learned from others, their willingness to share. You know, if I'm sitting at home by myself, I'm not sharing. I'm not growing. I'm definitely not questioning. I'm sitting on the couch watching TV. And what does that get me? You know, today I thank God that I am able to be at home alone and be okay. That was a new concept too. There was one night after Denny died that I was sitting at home and I had the remote in my hand. And I thought, I'm the queen. That was naughty. But, you know, I got to watch what I wanted instead of some of those crocodile shows that he kept. No. I'd give anything for him to be back here. You know that. But it was that realization, too, that after, because I was trying to think how old I would have been when he died. I don't want to know that. For all those years, this was the first time in my life that I found myself alone. I lived with nobody. I mean, all my years, college, I lived with siblings, you know, roommates. Yeah, this is the first time ever that I sat and I thought, oh, holy crap. I'm all alone with me. And it was the most frightening thing ever. I actually found that I had to go through another life-changing experience figuring out who I was or who I am. Because in that marriage, you become we. It was Denny and Deb. Not Denny or Deb. It was Denny and Deb. And I'm like, oh crap. You know, about the time you think you got it, then you don't got it. And it's okay. Because today I have tools that I can deal with life as life gets thrown at us. And how many people can honestly say that? We have tools that we can work with every day. That was magnificent in my eyes. Because I had never been able to feel comfortable in my own skin. And I thought, oh, I have arrived. No, it felt good. It really did. How freeing, you know. When I think about that sign, no pain, no gain, back in the treatment days, I can sit here today and say every pain was worth it. Because I am where I am today. And not you know, it's still a we thing, no matter how I say that. Because I couldn't have done any of it without all of you. Each one of you sitting here today has just become my new bestest friend. And I can use all the friends I can get. You know, I had to bring up my 3rd edition big book because it sat on the shelf. It looked shiny and new for a long, long time. It sat on the shelf, and it sat on the shelf, and it sat on the shelf. And one day, I got more involved in AA, and we had a big book study. And, you know, I'm sure that people agree to disagree, but Zoom became my new best friend. And I have expanded my horizons of people that I've known and met and the knowledge. When I said that piece about read, question, wonder, it opened up all kinds of new horizons for me. You know, I've destroyed my book. There's stuff everywhere. It's busted. It's been used. Oh my God, is that a new concept or what? You know, I have notes and highlights and stuff everywhere. And things that I didn't hear that before, and I go to write it in the book as I did last night. And I'd written it twice, because I did. I heard it 2 years ago, and then I wrote it again. You know, it's just amazing how it works. And I have to share this piece. I was digging through last night here, looking at, I have so many notes here. Some of them I wrote down who shared. But this one hit me last night as I was, trying to figure out what the hey I was doing today. Recovery. We, the unwilling, led by the unqualified, that's us, have been doing the unbelievable for so long with so little. We now attempt the impossible with nothing. And that was actually a quote by Dick Stocker that was shared by Father Jim on 1/5/24. It's things like that there goes my wonder. When I read and hear things like that, it is so amazing to me. And I'm, so grateful for everyone in this program that has shared their life experiences, their recovery, what they have read, what they have questioned, and what they have wondered. Because everything that I've shared, other than my own personal experiences, is something I stole from somebody else. Because there's been a lot of great people I've met in my years of sobriety. We were talking last night at the meeting too about those who have gone before us, and the legacy that they've left us, and how grateful I am for that. Because you had mentioned how many years old is AA? 81. And so think about that. There might be 2 million of us running around the countryside now, and there should be, twice that many if they admit they have a problem. But, that's a whole nother story. But with that, I think about the legacies that are the state of Nebraska. Take the state. And think about the people that you've met in your journeys and your travels in this state alone. How blessed we are. I think we have some of the best AA in the country in our little old Midwest here. And how blessed we are. I can go, we get to have more meetings than most because we are so rural. We have a meeting going to the meeting, then we have the actual meeting that we attend, and then the road trip home. And we analyze the crap out of things. We've solved a lot of problems in the world. Because we know, right? You know what I'm talking about. But, I think about the conversations that we've had on those road trips. The caring, the sharing, helping each other out. Not even knowing we're doing that. It's just what we do innately. And I thank God that, those people that were in that room the first time I walked in and I said something stupid like, I'm not sure if I'm an alcoholic or not. And one very wise person walks up to me and says, Deb, think about when you drink. It's like, yeah. Well, do you control it or does it control you? I'm like, dang. Got the answer there because I convinced myself I wasn't because I didn't need to drink every day. I could be that weekender or, But if I decide to stay and have a drink, it was never a drink. That was the issue. I couldn't guarantee what I was going to do. I'm just going to have a couple. Nah, you know how that works. And even though I didn't do it every day of the week, it didn't matter. When I drank, I was out of control. So, how lucky I am that there were people like that who were so direct and just called a spade a spade. Because seriously, I never would have made it. I was too hard-headed, ego-driven, self-centered, knothead. It was that simple. So in all of these years, the list of people, and we have a dear, dear friend who, and many of you may have met him somewhere along your travels. Guy Mills, Mr. AA from our area. And we were just talking about if he was still alive, he will be celebrating 64 years of sobriety. And that's an amazing accomplishment. But I don't care. Every time that man walked into the room, he'd be stepping about this high because he was excited to be there to see who was the newcomer because they were the most important person in the world. And he said, I'd trade my 50 years of sobriety for your one day. He thought that journey was so amazing. You know, and guys like that influenced us in our AA programs, you know, our groups around the area, and what the legacy that he left. But he shared his big book with me, which even looks worse than this one. And on the inside, he had signatures, people that had signed his book. And so many of them were deceased already. But names, it was so fun to go through that. And you talk about the history of AA. And to me, you know, it's you people. You are the history, and we need to remember that too. And I guess that's the thing that I found in service work was the importance of each one of us showing up in these rooms and what that brings to us. I mean, if nobody was there, what would we have? If nobody shows. And that scares me to death. You know, we were talking last night about sponsorship. And sometimes that's a dirty word, you know, because people aren't comfortable with it. And we were talking about lack of. You know, and I remember being in Omaha, and that's been a little bit ago, at one of the regional forums or something, and they asked the question about how many were willing to sponsor. And the number that stood up in that room was kind of frightening because it wasn't what I'd hoped for. You know, and I know that not everybody is maybe comfortable with, and that's what we were talking about. What is sponsorship? That was a loaded question. You know, so these opportunities that I've had to learn about the whole of AA. I am a part of a big picture. I'm just a little pebble. Bing. You know, in together is how we make it. And I have to remember that daily. I'm not in this alone, and I never, ever want to be alone again, for sure. I might be alone in my house, but I'm not alone in spirit. Forever, ever, ever. So, I mean, that has become so important to me. I used to sit in those bar rooms on that bar stool and feel alone. Nobody around me understands what's going on in my life. You know, poor me, another one. So, you know, that changed my emotions, ideas, attitudes, have new ones. I am so eternally grateful for that. Because, you know, that rigorous honesty that showed up. And I finally took it to heart and admitted I am an alcoholic. Bestest thing ever. And we talk about spiritual awakenings. That was one. That was the first one. I just had to keep going from there. And I'm glad that things turned out the way they did. Again, one of those little miracles that happened. I love the grapevine. I'm going to punch it here. It's my bathroom reading. No. Well, there is. That's where this is actually where this happened. I'll be rigorously honest. Sitting there reading it last night, actually. Now I lost my page here. But I'm reading this article. Oh, good God, what did I do? How come I took out the damn marker? Hold on a minute.
You were in there a long time.
Oh. Thank you, Mike, for your vote of confidence. I know exactly who said that. Oh my God. Did somebody change my grapevine? I'm getting there, I know I am. Yeah, that's right. Oh, there it is, there it is. Ho, ho, ho. I got it, okay. Thank you, God, for another miracle. All right, so, and bear with me, it's a short article, but I am going to read it because it was so poignant to me when I read it, and then when you hear who wrote it. Okay, hitting the road. Don't need beer for this. Dave and Pat are having a blast checking off their bucket list. Next stop, GSO in New York City. My wife, Pat, and I just returned home from a fabulous vacation where we got to cross 2 more items off our bucket list. We both love to travel, and the gift of sobriety has enabled us to wander. I got sober in July of 1983 after personally acquainting myself with pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. I thought for sure that my life was over after I joined AA because I was never going to be able to drink again. No more fun. I was certain I would never again be able to dance to live music, snow ski, water ski, golf, or fish, as all of these activities required massive quantities of beer and other things. I also loved to travel and used to spend long weekends once or twice a year in the Rocky Mountains. I can't tell you how overjoyed I was when my first sponsor explained to me that, yes, I could still do all these things and more without drinking. I learned I could even attend what the big book calls plain, ordinary whoopee parties, as well as Grateful Dead concerts. My sponsors even took me to my first sober concert. We had a blast dancing for 3 hours to Jerry and the rest of the Grateful Dead at the Red Rocks in Colorado. In sobriety, I became a certified scuba diver and traveled to 13 countries and logged more than 400 dives. When I was drinking, a big trip for me was a weekend in the mountains. Now, a big trip is being gone more than a month or crossing the international date line. My wife and I have been so blessed to attend AA meetings, not only all over Nebraska, but across the United States and the world. Whenever and wherever Pat and I travel, we are always check to see where the AA meetings are and to make plans to attend. Once after a meeting on the Caribbean island, St. Lucia, some of the locals asked us to come to their house the next day, Christmas, to help celebrate their sponsor's 25th sober anniversary. What a treat. It's my belief that I have over 2 million friends in this wonderful fellowship, but most of them I just haven't met yet. So, this brings me to last week. Pat and I were visiting New York City for the first time. Stepping Stones, the historic home of Lois and Bill in Bedford Hills, New York, has been on our bucket list for many years. And ever since I learned that you could visit our general service office and see the archives, we've wanted to check it out too. We got to go to the Founders Day in Akron, Ohio many years ago, and it was indeed a spiritual experience. For this small town Nebraska boy, however, going to New York City to see GSO and the Archives Department, and then getting to attend the Friday morning AA meeting held there, I was literally overcome. What a wonderful feeling it was of being home, no matter where I am, when a member of the staff asked me to give the lead share for the meeting. What a day. I want to thank everyone in attendance that Friday. I can't name the names, but you all know who you are. Pat and I are forever in awe of your service and dedication to our beloved fellowship. May God bless all of you at our GSO. Thanks for saving my life today and every day. And the reason this was so important to me when I read it, was the experiences, that bucket list. And I've had a few of those bucket list pieces. But what hit me was like, oh, I got to read this because it's Dave H. out of Lincoln, Nebraska. That was, anybody can put an article in the Grapevine. You don't have to be a big dog, a great writer, whatever. You submit it, and chances are you'll get published. But I thought this was so poignant, the fact that, I've been able to hit the road. I've been to, 6 different countries now. And if it weren't for this program, none of that would have happened. None of it. Or for me to even be standing up here sharing crap with you guys, Sorry, but no. But I appreciate, I'm really honored to be here and to share with you and to call you my new friends in the AA program, because it's always, I've been so blessed to be able to do different things, and I appreciate every opportunity, even though my hands sweat and I get nervous. It's okay. You're not supposed to say no, right? Right. I'm glad somebody's seeing it. Good one. You're on it, Ed. And with that, I am going to close and thank you for the opportunity.